Greetings, and in this short video presentation, we're going to talk about how to be an online adjunct and live a quality of life outside of the United States, and look at some of the benefits that we are given by living abroad. So I'm going to start off with a little bit of history. So back in 2011, I had 3 schools and I was working full-time, and I decided that I no longer wanted to work full-time. I wanted to be a part-time online adjunct. At that time, I was making $46,000 a year. So I decided that if I was going to make just $46,000 a year and give up my full-time job, I was going to have to move someplace where that $46,000 would support my lifestyle. So I started thinking about moving overseas, and then I started doing some research. And I found out there was a lot of Americans that were living overseas. Roughly, in the place where I live now, the Philippines, there's roughly 40,000 expats that live here. So I knew that there was a reason for that. And so I started to investigate, and I realized that, first off, the economy was good. The cost of living was low. They spoke English here as a second language. They teach it in their schools. They have fairly good medical if you can afford it from a private hospital standpoint, not the public side, but from a private hospital or a private doctor, the medical's quite good. So I got to thinking that maybe I should think about Asia, because this is the cheapest place that I'm going to find to live. Now, there are some places, in Europe, Bulgaria, and some other places, but I don't like the snow. I like it where the sun shines all the time, and I don't have to worry about putting on a jacket, and that would be the tropics. So on July of 2011, I jumped on an airplane, and I landed in Manila, and that's how this whole thing began. So what have I learned? A couple of things. I'll give you some advice here. Redundancy. You got to have redundancy, and lots of it. So over here in the Philippines, if you're going to live someplace, make sure you have at least 2 internet providers and that you subscribe to both, because you won't have high-speed internet every day, and sometimes you may not have it for a week, so you need to have a backup. So you're going to need at least 2 internet providers, if not 3. Now, I've had 3. I had one that was wireless. I've had 2 that were DSL. So I'm telling you from my experience that I've used all 3 at one time or another. You're also going to need a backup power source, such as a generator, something that can power your laptop or your desktop and power up your modems and all those things that you need to be able to continue working during a blackout or a brownout. We have a lot of storms over here, and sometimes there can be 2 or 3 days where there's no power. That doesn't happen often, but when it does, then you're going to find yourself living in a hotel, and that can get a little costly. Not too much, but you got to find a hotel that's got internet. All right. So there are a lot of places in the Philippines, for instance, and this is where you have to do your homework. You have to find out where the infrastructure is, regardless of whatever country you want to go to. If you want to go to the Bahamas, you got to make sure they're going to be able to provide you with electricity and high-speed internet. Because if you want to sit on the beach with your laptop and grade papers and all that fun stuff as an online adjunct living abroad, well, you can do it if you got the resource. No resources, no work. And schools don't care. They just don't care if you don't have internet access. They'll just find somebody else. Being an online adjunct means that you are disposable, and that's just how they treat you. So you've got to make sure that you can do your job so that you don't get disposed of. Now, the second thing that you've got to think about is, where are the best places to live? You've got to have security, because being a foreigner in a foreign country is not all it's cracked up to be, especially with the things that are going on in the world. So you got to make sure that you choose your location carefully. You don't want to get kidnapped. You don't want to get robbed. You don't have people breaking into your apartment at 3 o'clock in the morning while you're upstairs sleeping. right? So make sure you choose your location carefully. Now, I have had my place broken into at 3 o'clock in the morning while I was asleep upstairs. All they did was just take my laptop. Now that brings up a good point. What about all those things that I had on my laptop? Well, you've got to have redundancy there too. Everything has to be in the cloud. You've got to have a Dropbox, you've got to have a Google Drive, and you've got to have everything off of your computer. Everything. Don't leave nothing on your computer in case it gets lost, stolen, or it is destroyed because of some catastrophic event. Make sure that you provide yourself with that redundancy. Talk about redundancy for banking. Do not leave the States without at least 2, if not 3, good sources of banking. It's not uncommon to have a bank close up on you and just leave you stranded in a foreign country with a useless ATM card. So make sure that you have at least 2 banks, if not 3, and that those 2, if not 3 banks are all linked together so that you can transfer funds from one to the next. That's very important. Now, if you're going to travel over here, you're going to have to notify your banks that you're going to be living in a foreign country, and that if they see some transactions on an ATM in Cebu at some mall, it's you, and it's not somebody who's stolen your ATM card. And if you travel over here, because travel is so cheap, you can go from here to Vietnam, to Cambodia, Thailand, Japan, China for $50 round trip. So travel over here is a real convenience. So make sure that when you do travel, you notify your bank and let them know that, hey, I'm going to be in China for a couple of days, couple of weeks, whatever, and that's where you're going to see my transactions coming from, and that way they can put a note on your account. Other than that, you can look forward to it being closed until you call them and tell them that it was you. All right. So the other thing you have to think about is your health. I'm in excellent health, but if you've got health problems, then you're going to have to move to an area that does have at least some level of good medical care. Now, here in the Philippines, they have 2 types of medical care. There's the public, and then there's the private. The private you pay for, but it's dirt cheap. You can come over here and you can have a quadruple bypass done for roughly $2,500. Okay, that would have cost you bankruptcy back in the States. You can get anything done over here for a fraction of the cost medical-wise. And the medical is just as good. They've got all kinds of hospitals over here. They got Korean hospitals, they got Chinese hospitals, they got Japanese hospitals. They've got university hospitals. Sometimes you might have to travel to Manila to get the very best in medical treatment, but if you have to, you have to. It's just a plane ride. It costs you $50. All right. So know that you can find the things you need if you do your research. Now, I looked at South America before I came over. I was thinking about Uruguay, Paraguay. I was looking at some of the cheaper places to live down there, Honduras, Ecuador, a lot of different places I was looking at. But it all came down to a couple of things. It all came down to infrastructure, security, and I'm talking about economic security. I'm talking about stability of that country, which we see now they're having a hard time in different locations. Are there places that you can't go in the Philippines? Yes, but not really. I mean, I've been all the way up to General Santos on the island of Mindanao. I've never had a problem, and I drove from Davao. I took the mountain road all the way up there. It took 6 hours. Didn't have a problem. Nobody stopped us. Nobody robbed us. For the most part, you can travel anywhere, but do use your due diligence and make sure that you think about where you're going to go. Most of the time, if you have Filipino friends, they won't let you go somewhere that's going to be dangerous or go by yourself there'll be a group of them with you to help, secure you and make sure that nothing happens to you. Another thing I want to talk to you about is how you can extend your earnings. One of the ways that you can extend your earnings by working overseas is taking the foreign income tax exemption. What this is, it allows you as an expat to be taxed at a much, much lower rate than if you were working in the United States. Because you stayed out of the United States for at least 331 days a year, you are eligible to be taxed at a much lower rate. Now let's take a look at this. We come down here, you'll see that if someone is making $113,000 a year, normally they would be taxed at roughly $12,000. If you subtract the U.S. tax on the exclusion, that would be less $9,000. So your actual tax that you're going to pay on $113,000 is only $2,876. Now what I do is I pay extra taxes every month, and that way when it comes at the end of the year, I'm actually assured that I'm going to be taxed at a much lower rate. The last couple of years I've been making roughly about $146,000 a year. So I'm getting taxed on $50,000. That's it. Now that has other benefits as well. So let's say that you're making $146,000 in the States and you report your income to the federal student loan individuals. They're going to charge you roughly a couple $1,000s payment every month. Now I got a student loan balance of about $186,000. I'm paying on it every month, but I'm paying on it based on my net income, not my total income or my gross income. I am paying only $91 a month for that $186,000 student loan that I have. So there's another blessing that you get by being an expat living overseas. So not only are you going to get taxed less, you're going to make more, take home more, but your student loan debt or your payment is going to be greatly reduced. And the more or the less you make, let's say that you made $46,000 and you took the foreign income tax exemption. Well, now, you're going to be taxed at a much lower rate. So they might only tax you on, I don't know, $10,000 or whatever it is. You may not have to pay any tax at all. So when you ask for that income adjustment for your student loans, you could end up paying less than $50 a month, or you could end up paying hardly anything, as long as you're living overseas. So the 331 days a year, that means that you can go back to the States, but you have to stay out of the States for a total of 331 days a year to qualify for the foreign income tax exemption. Now, you don't want to talk this over with someone who doesn't understand taxes or for expats. I mean, there are CPA firms that deal exclusively with expats, and one of those, the one that I use, is called Bright Tax. Bright Tax. And they do a wonderful job. They're not cheap, but they keep you out of trouble. They are registered with the IRS. They are an agent with the IRS. So they will keep you out of trouble and make sure that they will keep you legit, and you will get that big fat income tax return at the end of the year, like mine for $17,000, which is like a bonus that I can spend on something more productive, such as a new house or a piece of property or something. So that's all I got for you. But if you have any questions about how you can make a living overseas as an online adjunct, please don't hesitate to ask a question, post a comment to the forum, or you can contact me and I'll be glad to get back with you. Know that before you make that jump, that you do your due diligence and you do your research. Don't just get on a plane and show up. And by the way, don't just get on a plane and show up without at least some savings. I would say don't come without at least $10,000 or $15,000 because that's what it's going to take to probably settle you in and get you into a good apartment, furnish it, get the utilities and everything hooked up. You can't just do that on the fly. I'm out of here. I will talk to everyone later, and I thank you for watching. And if you have any questions, remember, you can always contact me. See you later. Bye.